All right, welcome. Today on Linh Talks Tech, we have an interesting episode of panels. We have Shanthi and we have Rick. Shanthi is in Malaysia, is it Shanthi?
Yes, in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur.
Okay, great. And I'll let them kind of, talk about a little background, and Rick as well from Melbourne, Australia. But I want to kind of open this episode with the title you see, kind of after Solution Manager. And this follows on to my initial thought that there's a little fork on the road for people who spent, the entire or a lot of years in their career with SAP, developing skills and building experience and deploying for many customers or even customized solution on top of Solution Manager, and what that means to them now in the age of Cloud ALM and that transition. What does it mean in terms of control? What about complexity with different types of landscapes? And what does it mean to the future of SAP operations overall? So we're all here to kind of share our experience and opinions today. As a disclaimer, is of our own personal opinions and not representing any companies. Anyway, folks, so welcome. We all heard by now SAP Cloud ALM, and good or bad, we're not here to really talk about product specific things, but I want to look at it from a careers perspective, from the value creation, kind of operational control of what you have after Solution Manager. Because as we know, a Solution Manager will kind of go away eventually. Keep paying maintenance, or they'll keep it for a few more years. But 2027 is a date that SAP currently slated to stop official support for that. And what does that mean for SolMan experts, right? And so I'm going to be kind of hosting, but I also will share from my expertise as kind of a service orchestration automation platform person. That's what I spent the last 15 years doing, is focus on automation. And Shanti is kind of the main person that's really spent a lot of her time the last 24 plus or something years in Solution Manager and building around the whole application lifecycle management. And then Rick, again, will be fairly across the board, working from a partner ecosystem in SAP with many different types of solutions that kind of revolve around a Solution Manager, on top of Solution Manager, or alternate to Solution Manager. So why don't you guys kind of maybe give a little bit brief introduction, Shanti?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lynn, for inviting me to this to begin with. Because when you first asked me and you said, let's talk about life after Solution Manager, I agreed to it because, funnily enough, I've been getting a lot of queries from different consultants and so on asking me, what now? What do they do now? After they've spent like X number of years with Solution Manager. So just a bit of background on me. I started out as a basis consultant in like 1997 with a consulting company in Malaysia. And then I moved to the UK and then I worked with a consulting company there for a couple of years. And then I joined SAP UK and worked with them for a couple of years as well. And since about 2004 onwards, I've been an independent trainer, consultant, and now I've taken on more of an advisory role as well. So yes, a long time working with Solution Manager from the time it was first invented, I guess.
That is a long time.
A very long time. Well, it's funny because I remember when it first came out, and I was on a customer site at the time, and that was like the biggest thing that happened in the SAP world because for the first time you had a tool that could centrally monitor your landscape, which they never had before, and everyone was so excited about it. And I remember installing it for the customer and how it's evolved over the years. But there you go.
And then they say it used to be like, it was an ERP for IT, right? That was standard.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that intro. How about Rick? What about yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks, Lynn, for having me on your Tech Talk show. So I've watched several of your episodes, find them very interesting. My background has actually been in the SAP ecosystem for about 25 years, I suppose now, beginning with change control management, change control automation. So I was with a company called RevTrack for many years. They were prior to Solution Manager developing Charm. Around that, back in the days when I remember SAP were trying to say, look, you won't need change control in the future because no one's going to change anything. They'll go to stock standard. And I remember talking to the guy saying, hey, so you're telling me BP, Shell, and Esso are going to run exactly the same SAP systems?
See,
Really?
they had the concept back then of clean core, right? They didn't know that everybody was.
It was a long time ago, and so, but then they built Charm. So obviously they didn't think that was the case. And for many people have invested a lot of time in that as well. Then around 5 years ago, we moved more into establishing a broader concept around add-on solutions for IT teams. So lots of different automation solutions exist to assist an SAP team do their work in the background. And so we've now gone a broader overview of those kind of areas. And so I guess what we find is we're more of an observer as to what's going on in the ecosystem. Companies moving to RISE, what does that look like? Companies staying off RISE, what does that look like? Companies taking on board Rimini Street or Spinnaker or something like that. So what does that look like, particularly around the solution manager area? And then they need to start to make some decisions around, what are we going to do now? That's really my background.
Okay. So again, the format today is like we have basically a panel and we want to just talk openly and share experience and what we're hearing from either colleagues or customers or different folks or even SAP. I go to a quarterly SAP user group here in Americas, ASUG, and I hear lots of stories. And typically there's at least 30 customers and partners there at each quarter meeting. And there's a lot of sharing of stories and things like that. So it's a very common theme with the folks that have run SAP for many years now is the application lifecycle. And speaking of like saying no change, Rick, can compare to folks who run, they say, why does Ferrari not produce more cars? And because they can make a lot more money. And Ferrari's case, they said that their customers don't want everybody else to drive other cars that look like them. Right. So SAP customers, it's like saying you should run clean core, but everybody don't want to look like everybody else. They want to be unique, right? They want to, build. We are naturally a builder, right? We want to build on top of things and make things better. And so whatever comes out of the box has to be able to kind of like adapt and change with the customer's need. And I've never seen two SAP environment that looks the same, even though they're on the same version. Yeah. Even if you open up their component list, they don't look the same. There's just lots of variety. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to get, and that's why it's much more to talk and see what different experience we have here. Let's start with this first part. What SolMan built? Perhaps this is a question for you, Shanthi. I put up here 4 bullet points, but you can feel free to add to it. But what do you think around these? Is this an accurate kind of representation of what do you think they build? What makes a SolMan, a solution manager, expert or career over the last 15, 20 years add to the ecosystem for SAP?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, and I've said this over the years as well. Solution Manager has been one of the most underrated, underused products that SAP have come up with, because from the time it was first introduced, I think SAP had a real challenge positioning it because, as I said, when they first introduced it, it was like, oh, what do we do with this? Oh, it can look after our entire landscape. But if you remember, there was no fee for Solution Manager. So it was, we're giving it to you for free. So, it was always that weird thing like, you're giving it to us for free, but what do we do with it? And it was, again, like I say, it was a difficult positioning because unlike the other SAP systems, like an ERP system was straightforward. It's a transactional system. You sell something, you make money. Even a BW system, you analyze your data, you can make better decisions, and then your company makes money. Whereas with Solution Manager, how do you make money from it? So, it's a tool that customers could use to help them with a lot of things in their landscape. And of course, with Solution Manager, of course, it was a different thing because one of the selling points was that now you can do everything centrally. You don't need, an external product to do the same thing.
Right.
So over the years, it was evolving. They added in all the implementation tools. You had the testing tools, and then of course they added in, you had change request management, you had incident management. So you had all of those things that they added in over the years. But as I said, because it could do so many things, I've seen over the years with a lot of customers, they really didn't know what to use.
So do you
They
think it
would
was
use,
overwhelming then? It was overwhelming.
yeah, it was overwhelming. I mean, they would use the basic monitoring, of course, and then for some of the customers, of course, they would use change request management or incident management. But there was a lot of other things that it could do, which customers hardly looked at, unless they were for customers that were part of the max attention contract. I think they probably used a bit more because it was part of their contract agreement or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So SAP would actually provide some days as part of their contract to help them set up Solution Manager and to use Solution Manager. But for other customers, yeah, it was probably a bit overwhelming. It's a lot of things which they didn't know Solution Manager could do.
It's interesting you said that because I actually most customers I was at and as an outsider my observation has been that every single customer not anybody wants to touch solution. There's always some guy designated to be the owner of solution manager and one or two people, and that they're the people that they always go to configure something, customize it, etc. And nobody else want to touch it. It's like
Yeah,
a love-hate relationship, right? Okay, I want the
correct.
words, I want whatever, but like nobody wants to use it. Technically, they don't want to interface with it. They just say, "Hey, you guys go configure this, and I don't want to know anything about it." And like, just make this thing work, blah blah blah. Which is very interesting if you think about a product. If any product manager would tell you, first you get the requirements, then you create the solution, then iterate, and then you want to get the user experience, and so you want to include them in all of the life cycle of the product to be involved as user. But I can tell you, no customer that I saw that fully engaged in that. And I think what you just said, it revolves around this thing. Maybe because it's like if you didn't pay for it, even though you technically did in your maintenance, there's no you don't feel like you have any skin in the game, right? It's like if I give
Yeah.
a product for free, it's value less. What's wrong with it? Why is it free, right?
Yeah. Why is it free? Yeah.
But I think this point I put up here, and I maybe Rick, you have this because when you had RevTrack, you probably know why RevTrack was selling a lot of change managed stuff. I think it's like people want to own something, right? They want to actually own it, and the way to own something is you, like I said, customize it, use it. You know that you run the system, you run. No, you own every aspect of it. You build it, you put it on the server, you maintain it, you customize it, and then you roll it out to users, you train them, and then if you build any customization on top, you own that. That's kind of what I say about ownership and customization. I see that I looked on LinkedIn recently. There were several LinkedIn Solution Manager groups, and there's thousands of members in there. Thousands, right? So I'm wondering, because they built this and roll it out, and it was complex, and maybe a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people build career around it because they became a specialist, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. It became a specialization. Oh, you could be a change management specialist. You could be a technical operations specialist. You could be a testing automation. You could be a document management. So they created a lot of specialists out of that.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, like what you were saying, like because nobody wanted to really touch it or own it or do anything with it. That's how I got involved because nobody wanted to touch it, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it then. You know, like no big deal. It's just another system to me. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Literally, I mean, Solution Manager has been one of those products that has taken me around the world because, as I said, as it was offered as part of the Max Attention contract, I got asked to go to different Max Attention customers around the world and to show them how to use Solution Manager and to help them set it up and so on and so on. But you're right, ownership is a big thing because who actually owns it? And then I've been talking about this recently as well. Who's accountable for this? Who is it? The basis team? Is it the change advisory board? Is it the project team? Who is actually responsible for this? Who's accountable for this? And I think until you actually establish the ownership, then nothing really happens because nobody wants to really touch it. You got the basis guys who kind of like patch it and do the minimum that you need for it. Other than that, who owns it? It's always the challenge.
Right. I got the next slide for Rick here. So Rick, because I know you came from a different ecosystem with partners and solutions, especially back in the change day with RevTrack, there's always this, I would say, when SAP come out with this, AOM term, it's been around for a while. There's consulting companies that build around AOM. What do you think when you went to customers having, a need for change management? Why did they look for other solution, not just what's built into Charm or whatever for do your change management?
That is interesting, Lynn, because as Solution Manager got built out over time, it sort of became almost like a fractional solution. There were pieces brought in. They weren't really developed new. There were things SAP had running around the periphery. They were sort of brought into Solution Manager. And the dream was that this would become one really well integrated piece of kit, but it never did. And so you needed to have an expert in each area. So others would say, well, look, one of the reasons we go to a third party instead of the Solution Manager is that it does about 60 to 80% of what we want, but it's the weeding and feeding and the overhead that takes a lot. There was one very large US customer that had a team of 75 people to run Solution Manager. Now, that just wasn't running Charm, but it's all the different pieces. So they would have been one of your key customers, Shanthi. They used a lot of it, but that's how many people they needed across the board to do that. And so this is where SAP customers began to, I think, look for, well, okay, what can we do instead here?
Yeah.
And this is where change control became important because remember, change control automation through, say, basis technologies and Revelation software and RevTrack, they were developed about 25 years ago. And Charm only came on board maybe about probably 20, maybe 18 years ago. So it came in later afterwards. So a lot of people thought, oh, great, this is what we can use. But then when they began to get into it, they found it's a lot more complicated than what they had thought it would be. And so, you would find that the third-party customer would have a look at that and say, you know what, we've tried it. We don't want to roll it out. Everything is too complicated. We'll do something else. But that wasn't everybody. Others, Shanthi, I'm sure you've got many of your customers that use, say, Charm, for example, and really enjoy using it. They like it. Sure, it's got high overhead and things like that, but they're used to it. They've already invested in it. It's not a problem. And oftentimes it was you'd find a smaller customer, they would use bits and pieces of Solution Manager and in a sort of a dumbed down way. Where the larger customer that had the budget and the resources, they would invest a lot more heavily. So this would be where a company might sort of take on a more of an enterprise testing tool like a Tricentis because they've got bigger company, bigger budgets, rather than find a more nimble third party solution that they can deploy more quickly. So that was really my observation. It was there was a fellow out here in Australia who became like the SolMan expert, and he used to. It was like the Swiss Army knife for SAP applications. Depending whether you needed the blade or the scissors or the toothpick, you'd sort of pull this piece out, and he would sort of talk to people about the quick wins. These are things you can use in like monitoring and landscape management. Well, this is a quick win. You can set that up quite quickly. You can get that one running. You can get value from it. And then, of course, there came a period where Matt's attention wasn't getting the attention that it wanted. So they created a list of what they called the crown jewels around Solution Manager. Any third party in the ecosystem that was an alternative to those crown jewels got excluded for a period of time. And so that was quite interesting. I mean, eventually that sort of all fell by the wayside and it's sort of re-included again now as well. And probably importantly so, given that SolMan is approaching end of life, you need alternatives to do that kind of thing. So is that the sort of information you're looking for, Lynn?
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting in a way where one of the first bullet point here, kind of SaaS centralization. SAP is the slowest, comer when it comes to SaaS, and if you think about SaaS, it's probably the last 15 years really that when SaaS solution came out, the whole promise is everything simple, onboarding, instant. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to run it. You don't have to patch it. You got a, instant solution based on a very specific requirement. And if that solution provides you that, tool right away, onboarding was smooth and you pay for what you use. And this is where I see Cloud ALM finally is doing this shift. You think about it, they're very behind to get to this cloud-based solution. Not unlike when it used to be also SAP CRM. People hated SAP CRM. They went to Siebel, went to PeopleSoft, and all, and then SAP finally said, okay." Then they really re-engineered that. So this cloud shift for Cloud AM, I think, it's a shift for SAP for sure to go SaaS, kind of, right? But it's not like mind shattering because, again, other SaaS solutions been around for a long time. In monitoring, the change management, ITSM, in every area that you think of, there's been a SaaS alternative. And so I think SAP finally realized and they're centralizing this. But this is the way that SAP does it. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think their idea is because they thought with SolMan, they kind of lost people got wander around and got lost in the forest with too many things. It got complicated, and they said, "Well, let's get it back." And now, since it's kind of SaaS, and we know exactly what they use and don't use, right? They kind of like want that self control, so they know when you log in what you configure, what you don't configure. But the fact is that it's reduced some of that SolMan extensibility that people used to just do whatever they want, right? It's that system, kind of like ECC. I'm going to have an add-on. I'm going to, do customization. You can't do a lot of that right off the bat with the SaaS solution. And then my thought about this, and I talked a little bit earlier in another episode that actually talked about the consultant kind of now don't do a lot. They can advise and they can kind of work on it, but like they're not going to do a lot of this extensibility because it does require different set of skill sets to extend something like a BTP add-on or a whole third-party product that actually works with Cloud ALM. So what are your thoughts on that, Shanthi?
No, you're absolutely right. So now, with the cloud solution, like you said, how much can they actually customize? Not a lot, actually, because everything is managed by SAP, everything is controlled by SAP, and you're just using it as a product, but you can't really tailor it and do anything else much with it. So yeah, very much so in terms of reduce extensibility. And what the consultants need now in terms of leverage is really knowing how to use the BTP services that can work with Cloud ALM. So a lot of additional things. I mean, I was just talking about things like accountability. So if they wanted to look at more security details, so if they wanted more audit details, then now you're looking at a BTP service. So you've got the audit log service that they need to enable, and that's going to pick up more details. So there's a lot of other things that they need to leverage of rather than just the basic Cloud ALM itself if they wanted more functionality. So yeah, I mean the whole skill set is changing, because there's no more, like you said, like before, you had masses of consultants that would come in and they would customize your solution manager system and set up charm and set up incident management, and that would be like a whole project by itself. You don't have that now.
So if you were to put yourself in that shoe, if when you were doing these kind of max attention stuff and going out to customers and helping them, maximize their use of a particular solution for Cloud ALM, I mean, honestly, you would have to put on a lot more hats because you have to be like a BTP development expert. You'd have to be like an API integration. Let's say you want to integrate in some third-party application for monitoring. You'd have to be like an open telemetry expert. God knows what's involved. So I know SAP is trying to, get BTP out to a lot of developers and get them to kind of build apps and things like that. But honestly, I don't know. Does it make it simpler or more complicated?
I think it's more complicated if you ask me personally, because now you're looking at a lot of other things. And also, like, if we talk about customers that were already using Solution Manager, and especially if they were using a lot of Solution Manager, they were using Charm, they were using incident management,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to just suddenly switch over
Mm-hmm.
to Cloud ALM. It's not so straightforward. So now you've got a whole hybrid situation going on.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still using a bit of this, they're using a bit of that, and then they need to, now leverage of some BTP services.
Mhm.
Maybe they also need some third-party products. So yeah, it's become a whole lot more complicated now.
So I was talking about when we did cloud migrations, SAP's like, is it a lift and shift, or is it a transformation? It's a rebuild, or it's a it's a recode. There's all these factors now that we need to think about, because there's really not a straight path, because the path is different for every customer, unless you just greenfield, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's different for every customer.
Yeah, I'm
And this
curious,
is where
Rick, down under. Sorry. Do you see this conversation happening there? I know back there it's a little bit more like wait and see what the US or other areas do. What do you see down in Australia as far as the adaptation into this, I would say, structural shift to this cloud offering?
It's interesting. One customer, they were going to do a lift and shift, but they decided to go greenfield, and they're full on BTP. And I asked him, I said, well, you're trying to do clean core, so you're doing everything in BTP. Is it simpler or is it more complicated? He said, it's the same, just different. It's still complicated. And what we're finding with ALM is that most customers are taking a bit of a hybrid approach, because ALM in many ways is still maturing. It's a bit like where SolMan and Charm was decades ago. It's not there yet. And in some areas, SAP have said it's never going to be. So ALM is never going to replace Charm. So what are you going to do? You're going to have a hybrid approach, probably integrate a third party alongside of ALM. So you get the good stuff from ALM, but you still get the control and the minutiae stuff that you need as well to keep on top of everything. And so that's where you're finding things. And, are customers going to build big new enhancements in BTP? I think the jury, from what I've observed anyway, the jury's still out a little bit on that. The whole narrative around clean core has sort of been morphing over the last couple of years now. So now it's no longer leave the core alone. It's developing the core properly, which is what people should have been doing all along, right? To actually create a clean core so that if there's an upgrade, it's not going to affect the custom code and those kind of things. And so,
interesting.
I mean, here, most people have made their decision. They're either staying, planning to move, or they're in the process of moving. Some have already moved.
Right.
And then once they get there, most are going to cloud version, cloud ERP. It's hard to know what to call it these days. It's a bit like a moving target. I think RISE is the easiest. Everyone still understands what we're talking about.
Yeah. See, that's
when
what
it comes
happened,
to
right?
RISE.
The crowd always win. You can call it some new name. They're gonna call it what they used to saying. Often rolls off the lips and right. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right. But I'd see that the BTP side, and this is what I noticed is that, and because I also function as a SAP partner, they definitely put out a very big call to action for partners to go build apps for Cloud ALM. Very specifically, I mean, I saw as recently as a couple of weeks ago, and they're like sent to all build partners. They say, hey, we're having this roadshow. Please come. They always like doing these challenges and try to build apps on top of Cloud ALM via BTP. And that's really, they want partners to build. The problem with that is that partners are independent, meaning that they build what they build based on whatever they think technology-wise is beneficial for the customer. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go learn BTP and build their apps on BTP now, right? So I see that's a kind of a disconnect. But anyway, that's just my observation. Let's move on to this slide that I created. We'll talk about visibility versus execution. And what I mean by that is kind of a recurring theme in Cloud AM is like, you have visibility, you have process guidance, kind of like everything is best practice templates. But it assumes a lot of things. It assumes you're coming out of a very like green S4, very industry fit into this industry, and your process is very clean core, right? But the fact is that customers tend to be all walks of life in a hybrid environment, that they don't have this nice and clean, like everything inside. Now, all my apps are not on S4 and they're not on Rise. And, I have some of this and I have some of that. And so that's what I mean, visibility versus, execution in terms of what some of these areas I talked about. Like they talk about monitoring is the first thing that a lot of customers use in Cloud ALM. Shanthi, is this what you see as well? When people try the new Cloud AM, it's free for them. First thing they do.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying earlier, it's not just a simple lift and shift. We were doing this before, we're going to do this now. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. I mean, SAP themselves have said that, it's a different ALM product. It may have some similarities, but essentially it is a different ALM product. So what do they do now? I mean, for some customers, I've seen with some customers where if they were not really using Solution Manager that much, maybe they were just doing monitoring and nothing else, then, it's no big deal. They can just start using Cloud ALM, and, they've already moved to the cloud, then that makes it even easier. So they can just start making use of some of the tools there, and it's sufficient for what they need. Okay. But that is the very small percentage, I think, of customers compared to a lot of other customers, which have got very complex landscapes, and it's messy. They've got a bit of this, they got a bit of that. And as you said, with Cloud ALM, it's all standard out of the box tools that they've provided, which may not be enough for some customers. They may need additional things as well. So yeah, I mean, like I said, for how many customers is this going to be something that they can use out of the box without touching anything else? I think it's a very small percentage of customers.
Right. Yeah. And I think from my kind of, I put on my soap hat here, what I do see is, this whole push towards observability from a technical standpoint for a lot of years now, the last probably 10 years. There's a lot of observability platform alternative, SAP. There's a whole bunch of names out there. But underneath of it all, there's still a lot of it are talking kind of monitoring, right? There's not really going beyond and calling it more automated operations. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like it doesn't equal remediation. Most customers couldn't care less how many alerts they got. They just want to take care of the problem, right? So because if you set, different thresholds and you don't get alert, and, I don't care if you get no alerts. I just want to know when there's a problem that you already detected and fixed. Tell me you've remediated. That's actually only a notification that I want, right? I'm talking from an idealized operations manager standpoint. And so that's the first thing I wanted to kind of, from my SOAP standpoint, where it differentiates, right? So monitoring observability is great, but all the dashboards and charts and whatever you have, reports for management, does not actually address operational need to actually fix or prevent the problem from happening downstream. So that's kind of the first thing. And then talking about the process, SAP has been always preaching a lot about business process and business process automation. And then there's a whole bunch of companies creating things like RPA, robotic process automation. And SAP even say, look, out of the box, we have this template. You can just deploy. But again, most of the customer I know, their business process does not conform. Even they in the same industry, the SAP have the best practice. Their requirement, because of country-specific thing or multi-country, they have to follow their business process that was designed for them by maybe an SI. And it's been like that for years. To take that and say mold into this standard process, and using Cloud ALM as to monitor this process or use this process out of the box to track your multiple stage businesses, it's almost like an over assumption, right? So what they really do need is they need to look at this and say, I have this, and yes, I can plug in this standard process, but like the old days, you would have an extension or you would have a hook. Now you can call this, and now it calls this part where I go out there and do my specific thing, and I come back, and then now I run this other part that is standard process. So it's standard in a way, but it needs to be able to have orchestration beyond the built-in process. And that's what the second bullet point, from my perspective anyway, I see that as kind of a misconception about, having standard process. Actually, orchestration, especially now in the age of AI, is even more important because a lot of the process are not typical human process anymore. It may be agentic AI, and you need a workflow orchestration that will span a lot of that. So that's an area. I don't know where SAP plan for Cloud AM is for that area, but that's very important. And then the last bullet point that I put there is that really people thought if they could document, like SAP Solution Manager had document management and solution documentation, all that stuff. And they think that if they with that they can recreate whatever they need, a blueprint or something. But again, that is documentation for maybe training, knowledge management, but it does not equal automation. If your goal eventually is to run your system simpler, autonomously, with less people involved, then that doesn't equal automation. Automation have to take a run book and turn into a digital workflow and run it. So this is some of the areas I noticed. What's your take on this, Shanti?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of it is still manual processes.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody is manually looking at, the alerts that have been created.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody is manually still checking the details. I was even talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they were still using Excel spreadsheets to make a note of the problems and errors that they've noticed in the system. And I'm thinking, oh my God, did we not do this like 10, 15 years ago? Have we not gone beyond the spreadsheets? But this is what's happening. People are still
Wow.
doing all of this manually. And you're absolutely right. Even with the documentation, it is just documentation. They
Mm-hmm.
are just they were using Solution Manager as a central documentation storage. At most, I've seen with some customers, they may have put in some of their business process diagrams.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, they can then do some business process monitoring. But other than that, it is just documentation for them to look at. It's just a central documentation storage area.
Rick, what do you see?
Well,
You're the
you
IT
do, you do,
automation, but
yeah. Look, the amount of manual stuff that goes on in the background is extraordinary, really. You still got transports being pushed around based on a spreadsheet layout. You've got a list of security vulnerabilities down the left and a checkbox on the right who checks them and those kind of things. And I look at this and I say, look, there've been third-party tools available to automate this stuff for decades. So my question is, well, why don't teams do it?
mm-hmm.
Why don't they go down that road? It's not always a matter of budget because these tools are not all that expensive. They're really very cost effective. And so basically what it is, all this manual effort, and Lynn and Shanti, you've been down in the mines, so you know what it's like. You are reacting to things landing on your desk all day. You don't get your time to lift your head above the parapet and say, how could we do this better? And let's say you do get time to do that. You've got this short window to get it done in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get it done in that time, then that shuts. And you might not get another opportunity to resurrect that in 6 months' time. But by then there's a different initiative that's on the table. And so it sits there. So this is really where things just stay as they are. And I think, now I don't know much about how Oracle or JD Edwards or those guys manage their infrastructures, but in the SAP world, it's really the status quo is the most difficult thing for anyone in SAP, it seems, to overcome. It's a really big hurdle to jump. It's always been done this way. We don't have time to think about it doing it any differently. So we don't. So, therefore, Shanti, I think that's why you see your spreadsheet still in use. It's just too hard to move off.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, I obviously spend a lot of time mainly with the technical team, the basis guys, and so on. And usually it's a very small team. And as you said, a lot of the times they're just firefighting the whole
Yes.
day long. They're just firefighting stuff because everything gets dumped on their plate, pretty much.
Mhm.
Everything that doesn't fit anywhere else gets
Yes.
dumped on their plate. So, they don't have time to actually look at anything else, really.
So I moved this one to the reality because that's what we've really been talking about. So my question to you guys is, you think 5 years from now, SAP is simpler?
Is simpler? Is that the
Yeah.
question?
Yes.
Mhm.
Because isn't that what SAP is saying? Like you go clean core and it's everything runs simple, all that stuff, and upgrade simple and manage simple. So that's really my honest question. I think 5 years from now, do you think SAP will be simpler or more distributed and complex, like, what do I say? More SaaS products, more hyperscalers, because everybody wants to be an AI data center, more API integration and automation needs, because now, you got too many things to do manually. So does that make a simpler view? And I'm really just want to get your opinion on this.
I reckon SAP customers are going to find a way to simplify. So this is what I think might happen, is they're going to shrink down their reliance on SAP to as small as they possibly can. And they're going to add other applications around the outside. And we see this happening. SAP went down that road themselves, right? To create like the core,
The
the
S4
financial
core,
core.
S4 core.
And then we've got Ariba and Concur and work success factors around the outside edge. And then the SAP customer says, well, success factors isn't the SAP I'm used to. What else is out there? So they look at Workday. I think that's what will probably happen around the periphery. Customers will build things themselves. And I think a strong predictor of the future is often joining the dots of the past. But we've got some interruptions at the moment. So AI has come in as a big interrupter. So it's a little bit hard to join those dots at the moment because they could diverge in a different direction as people get used to that kind of thing. But if you just go on the past, I can't see SAP becoming more simple. It'll just be different. ERP is complex. Business is complex. There's so many moving parts and moving levers, and you've got to bring all that into the one ERP system. How do you create that to be simple? It's not.
So I heard Shanthi laugh when I asked the question. So you get to say why you laugh.
Well, because I was just thinking, like, I've been doing this, for, like, you guys been doing this for almost 30 years, and I'm still waiting for the day that it becomes simpler. But what I've actually seen over the years is that, as you said, you add this, you get a third party product here, you got another SAP product here, and it just gets more complicated. Now you've got some systems that are on premise. Now you've got some systems that are in a cloud, but they need to talk to each other. Now you got to connect all of that. It doesn't get simpler. And I don't think it's going to get any simpler. I think it's just going to evolve. It's going to be different. People just have to learn what it evolves to.
I'll share my personal feeling on this because this is my 33rd year working with SAP, and as recent as right now, I'm advising other customers on other things. And with that much experience under my belt, I've seen everything. I've seen everything from mainframe to latest and greatest here. Every customer frightens me, not because they look to me as kind of an expert advisor. They bring me in to help them, guide them. And the moment that I talk to every new customer, I'm frightened, meaning I see the stuff they have and I'm like, I don't know anything about that. It's like, I need to plug this into that. And this is the app we use for that. And we need to integrate with that. I'm like, geez, with all my experience, and I'm frightened about what they want to do. Right. I mean, I'm just like, it blows my mind. I'm thinking, how complex can this be? I mean, I've seen everything, but no, I haven't seen everything. They keep making up new stuff. There's always
making up new names, names for old stuff. If it's a new product or an old product renamed, it can be tricky. I haven't heard of that before. What does that do? Oh, that's just that. Like, PI, for example, being named two different things.
So that leads me to think, if complexity persists, right, someone must make it work. Someone must orchestrate all of this, right? The question is become, who's going to do that? Is it the folks that spend the last 15, 20 years on Solution Manager that have this experience with integrating, optimizing, that's going to leap and then say, okay, in the brave new world, I'm going to tech up all this API integration. I'm going to do all this, orchestration. I'm going to learn AI, BTP, plug them all in, work with third-party vendors, on-prem and in cloud, with RISE, without RISE. So who's going to do that, and what does it look like? And I feel a little bit, if I'm frightened, what would be the guy that's doing this work gonna feel, right? Because it's okay when I go in and I scope the project and I help guide in main high level architecture, but then somebody's gonna do the work. So I feel like the people that's gonna be doing the work, they really need to take a second look and think about what skills do I need to now work in this brave new world, right? So customers say, I'm going to go Cloud ALM and I'm going to have RISE and I have S4 and I have, business data cloud and blah, blah, blah. And I need all this integrated and operate seamlessly. That's the statement. What does that need? What does it look like? What do you guys think about it, right? A year from now, Cloud AM will be on whatever, every quarter, new features and things like that. How do people keep up and how do they actually stay relevant in this new world of, this kind of complexity? I don't have
No,
the answer.
this is where it's funny you say that, Lin, because I think this is where somebody maybe that doesn't have as much experience will actually strive in this sort of area because they're just looking at the new stuff, they're just learning this, and they're completely unfazed by all of this. Whereas when
They don't
you've
have battle scars,
been,
right? With the one without battle.
yeah, correct, they don't have the battle scar, so they're just going in naive, and they're like, oh, it's a new product, wonderful, let's do this. So I think they actually have an advantage in this sense. Whereas, when you've seen it like over the years, and like you said, we've, been through a lot of different projects, which are quite scary, to be honest. And this is why, I recently wrote about this as well. I said, I definitely don't consider myself an expert because everything is changing all the time. How can you be an expert in like a particular thing? Because next week it's different. The week after it's different. Next year it's different. So, you can only learn and evolve from it. I think the only thing that maybe I could use the term expert is that the experience over the years maybe helps us to recognize certain things faster. So you might see something, you might see a situation and you're like, okay, maybe this could be this.
I think you're
And you
talking
can
about the
maybe
wisdom part, huh?
Yes.
you can maybe diagnose something quicker. You can maybe, say, okay, maybe this could be a solution. Yeah. So you have that advantage, I think. But I think in this sort of complex scenario now, I think the people who are new to SAP probably have an advantage because yeah.
So not working on not sort of working on the tools like you guys do. I mean, how do you see someone sort of making that career change or becoming more nimble to be able to take on new things? Because we spoke a little while ago, Shanti, about basis people being reactive firefighters. So how do they actually pull themselves out enough to perhaps learn a new way of doing something or to look at something different?
Yeah, perfect,
I mean,
perfect question.
How does all that come together?
Yeah,
So
perfect.
I've got this slide up just to answer that. I think it's more of a question, right? Unfortunately, the fresh people don't get to play with this, and I'll tell you why. Graduates are having problem competing because right now with whole AI and stuff like that, fresh people are hard to kind of say, hey, I'm gonna entry even internship or out of college get a position because I've got now competing with people with like 15 years experience that now want to transition to what I call more of agentic operations because they could learn orchestration. They could take what they have. They know how inside the machine work. Now they can be more of a creator of workflows, an orchestrator, a director of different operations and they understand the integration. Because coming out of college in a fresh mind, they don't understand the complexity of integration. That's where I think it's a little bit hard, where you have multiple touch points, the complexity of the matrix, if you will. Having one system, it's like when I got out of college, I'm like, hey, here's one system. You learn that system. And that's what you're great at. But if to throw out and say, can you show me an integration diagram of, a Fortune 5,000 company of your backend system? That diagram is going to basically get lost in this new person. I think this is my tech is kind of you shrinking down, administering to a tool, you're going to elevate to more of an orchestration role. You're going to integrate in more agentic stuff. Not everything will be classical work. Even automation will have to be melded together using an orchestration pipeline that involves both classical and new agentic kind of automation. So you have to be kind of thinking along the line of, I would say, services. What are the service components and how do I glue them and orchestrate end to end? That's kind of my thinking around the career implication. This is back to you guys. What do you think that the skill set for? And I'm assuming somebody spent 15 years in SAP, they're probably not going to leave and completely go somewhere else. They're going to continue working, but their skill sets need to be developed more expansively.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think I was mentioning earlier as well. Recently, I've been, getting a lot of questions from consultants who have spent the last 10, 15 years just on Solution Manager. And obviously now that's changing. So what do they do? So, I mean, the thing is, yes, they do need to expand in terms of broaden their knowledge in other areas. So they have to definitely look at BTP administration, integration. Like you said, if they get a chance to work on orchestration roles or work with some of the new AI stuff that's coming up, then those are some of the things that they need to look at, because it's no longer going to be just, like you said before, when I joined, it was just customers had a 3-system landscape. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
You learned what they had. You just looked after the 3 systems and that was it. Now, we're looking at a whole different beast.
Yeah.
So now it's a combination of on-premise, cloud, third party, other things. So they need to definitely expand their knowledge in terms of all of these different areas.
Definitely.
If they plan to stay in an SAP career, of course. To be honest, I did consider, shall I just go and do something else like pet sitting or gardening or something else. I did look at it, but there you go. I decided to stay in SAP for a little bit longer. So
That
this
is
is where
definitely
we are.
true today. As recently as last week, I was on another call with a partner and looked at the BTP, and they're just showing one sample of a customer that they're managing, and it's a managed service provider. And I was looking at the screen, I'm like, geez, look how many sub accounts are under this. This one BTP customer global account had multiple screens of sub accounts, and every sub account was for something. Was one for development system of something, some were for something else. Every single app was like a different sub account. So I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this is way complicated. And, show me a 7-system landscape, and I can understand that. And show me this thing with a beast of sub-accounts that needed to talk to each other and transact across and govern from a security. And so it's mind-blowing that this is gone from, something simple and that's just the BTP portion of this, right? Because then you have to connect it on-prem to all the other things going on, and then to outside third-party stuff. So it's amazing. The complexity just went right off the chart. Rick was saying something?
No, it's just I just look at this and the mind boggles really. Because I was studying RevTrack back in the days when it was a 3-system landscape. Then SAP went to the MySAP and they ended up with all these different modules, and then that morphed again, and it sort of brought that back into something else. But now we've added BTP. So I think going back to, is it going to get simpler or stay the same? It seems, from what we see, it seems like it's going to stay the same or get more complex. And then what does that mean for people working within SAP? And from what I see, Shanthi, I think it's probably an opportunity for the new starters to actually come in, or those that haven't been in it for very long, to actually try and expand themselves out. Because I just think of it, you've got a new role coming up in BTP, for example. The amount of competition there would be to get involved in that project, because everybody wants to learn about it, but not everyone's going to get on the project. So who's going to get the Guernsey? And this is really where, maybe there's a role, Shanthi, for someone in sort of SAP career guidance and career management to help guide and direct
That is a
SAP.
That is in the SAP career guide.
Yeah, because it's changing, right? It's different. Should you invest all your time learning about AI, or is there better ways to spend your time? What is it?
Yeah.
You hear the people say, look, it's only the guy who knows AI that's going to keep his job. Well, I heard recently there's a drift from middle management to actually taking on trade apprenticeships because they're afraid AI is going to take their role. So now I think it's a little bit uncertain as to what's down the road, and I'm glad that I'm sort of not on the tools in SAP. I think it would be a little bit uncertain now. It's sort of in the higher management area where you're sort of doing a more of an overview, wouldn't be so bad. But if you're like in basis or even in development, even in functional design, those kinds of things, architecture, it's looking a little different. I don't think we've answered anyone's questions, Lynn, but we've certainly opened the door to say it's something you're going to have to think about. Right?
I thought a couple areas. So if I was giving career advice right now, and actually I was doing this recently. Like I say, I had a colleague that's have about 20 years SAP experience, and 13 years at one company that recently decided to move headquarters. She kind of like didn't think it was this hard to get a new position. They decided not to move. So talking about career advice, and somebody's done everything from basis to leading product management and cross-functional teams. I would say definitely the new age, it requires a little bit more of kind of a automation fluency. If you think AI, it's all about automation, right? Everybody want efficiency, so you need that fluency in terminology, languages, and tools. And then the new world does not live in a little shell. So I always think about API, thinking about stuff, because I had to get into it about 10 years ago, just working with new SAP products that were all written, and the only thing you can do to talk to it, to actually understand or get anything out of it, was through an API interface. And we're not talking, thing with Babi, anything like that. This is more like, web-based API interface, protocol exchanges, and, certificates and credentials and OPI keys. And so all this terminology now have to be part of like the vocabulary of somebody who's going to work in lifecycle management. And then definitely around, as I said, orchestration. If you don't understand how things get done in the great big business world, you can go any customer and ask them, what is your most critical business process? And you can sit down and they can describe to you on a big board, and it will take you an hour to just glance at it. But what they really needing is you to understand that orchestration logic, because something has to orchestrate it. It doesn't move along by itself. And some of that is not going to be done by people in the future. Think about it, right? There used to be people processing, for instance, like an order to cash. There'll be somebody doing order entry, and somebody's going to do some fulfillment, and then doing invoice and collection. So that's a very kind of but in the future, a lot of that, think about it, might be done by an orchestrated AI agentic workflow. So I think that's one aspect. The other one is operationally. Every day stuff's got to run. It's got to be ready to be, dealing with business. What does that look like from an operational side? Well, again, that side of things, none of these companies are adding more people to administer all these new systems. They basically want efficiency via orchestration or operational AI. So if I want to put a system in to automatically manage these operations and automatically remediate 50% of the errors, something like that, right? This is an area we know in SAP to be infamous for, like failed jobs and stuck queues. That should be automatically operationalized so that it's kind of an AI level logic. And then on top of all that, I'd say my ideal job would be kind of a control plane. Like I can have all these systems, but I want to be like the controller. I'm orchestrating and making sure everything flows smoothly across. And that's really what I think people need to grasp around this area of what their career shift looks like. and maybe not all of that, but maybe focus on something and be good at it. So that's kind of my thought on that. What do you think? Am I way off track? Did I leave something important out?
No, I mean, like I see it evolving in a lot of different areas actually. So what you mentioned, I think, is probably one of the areas. But I've also seen, like, for some people that have moved. I actually had one guy that I spoke to recently, and he was doing basis. He was basis manager for a team, and then, as you said, things were evolving. So he's actually just switched completely and he's gone to development. So he said, okay, I'm going to just learn ABAP development. And now he's gone on and he's doing all kinds of things with ABAP. So I think it's going to change for people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, for example, I don't do just pure basis stuff anymore. I look at BTP, I do ALM advising, I do cloud ALM stuff. So I don't think it's just going to be a simple one function anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely need to have a whole different set of skills.
Yeah. There's no
with you.
equivalent of a solution manager specialist anymore in cloud ALM, I think
No,
is what I hear.
no,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
anymore.
Okay. So this is my key takeaway to summarize. If you guys want to add anything to this, we already agree
Yeah,
the
we agreed to
complexity
that.
is not going to go away, but yeah, execution, you might have to move around a bit. And it's not uncommon, like you say, maybe a manager now, middle manager, instead of losing their job, they might have to pick up technical skills. So they move down and say, I want to learn AI, I want to learn, BTP or whatever. Maybe I want to do vibe coding, because I can just dictate to it in English and get code and, So there's a lot of exciting stuff, but at the same time, it's scary, depending on where you are in your career path. But I appreciate having you guys all here to kind of discuss this through, because I don't think there's any more tool admin. You have to move to kind of like execution phase of orchestrating and doing shifting to somewhere else, or maybe machine, maybe AI. So I hope this has been kind of enlightening. And in a sense, when I used to go in and sell third-party solutions that has something that solves a problem that a customer may not like that existed in SolMan, I felt like I always had to like get somebody on the other side defending SolMan. Like, they always like, no, this does is all great. I'm like, then why does management express a need for something else? I don't feel like there needs to be in the defense anymore, because it's like Cloud AM can be great at the same time that many other things could be great. That the whole hybrid, the whole kind of ecosystem could work well if you design it from ground up thoughtfully in an orchestrated manner. And maybe it's just one component in the big picture. Maybe it's a bigger piece of the pie than other pieces. Depends on what the priorities are for folks. Going back to more of a career shift, I think people have a lot to think about. I would be, if I was doing SolMan as a consulting engagement right now, I would be thinking about what I need to spend my time doing and learning and picking up, or changing altogether, right? So Rick, Auntie, final thoughts?
Yeah, that's why, like, when I first thought about talking about ALM, I knew it was not just going to be one solution, because for each customer is going to be different. Because for some customers, it's going to be a combination of, if they're using SolMan, they're going to carry on using SolMan. For some parts of it, they might use Cloud ALM, they might use something else. So it depends on their landscape. It depends on what they are using, and it depends on what they need. And also, like, like I said, for the lot of people that were asking me for career guidance, and I actually said I don't do career guidance, because I don't know. It's evolving. Things are evolving, and you just have to see what interests you, what areas you can get involved in. You can't just be stuck doing what you were doing 10 years ago. That's not going to work anymore. You have to see what other technologies are coming up, what else you can get involved in. And it's always been the case. SAP has always evolved over time. If I was stuck just doing basis, what would I be doing now? I would not be doing much. So you just have to evolve with the times and pick up the new technology as it's coming up.
Evolve the role.
Evolve.
Evolve the role.
Yes.
Rick?
Yeah, look, I think there's opportunities in the area of third-party orchestration, because as we mentioned, ALM's not going to cut the mustard for everybody. Everyone's got particularly with the larger complex SAP infrastructures, they're still going to be large and complex. They're still going to be managed. They've got to be worked through. You've got security issues. You've got scheduling issues. You've got all the same underlying functions that still need to occur. Sure, some of them will have been handed over to SAP, but the customer retains quite a few of them, more than what I think they realise.
Mm-hmm.
They do hang on to. So probably learning about those kind of things, working in that way, understanding what third-party tools are available, how orchestration can actually work. There are a number of different orchestration tools available. I know, Lynn, yours is in that area. There's a lot of things that can be done to stitch things together at the back end to relieve that uncertainty that goes on back there, because SAP systems are still going to be critical. They're not going anywhere.
So it's a hopeful look on really expanding horizon. And maybe it's a good time people to learn, because it's never a better time, especially with AI, to learn now. Everything is expedited and delivered content crisp, so it makes learning new things hopefully easier. There's more of them for sure, so you do need the help to get those accelerator in knowledge management. I mean, I get excited every day now looking at playing around with AI tools all the time. So I appreciate both of your inputs on this, Shanthi and Rick. It's been wonderful talking about this on a career level, and I certainly think that not to scare off people, but at least expand your horizon and keep learning, right? That's kind of the main goal. Keep the options open. Anything that comes along, it doesn't have to be all SAP or none of SAP. Bit of both, bit of everything would be also welcome. Customer really value, from my experience, the vast experience that somebody brings along to the team. Knowing all the third-party stuff and how to integrate them is a really valuable thing, not just, whatever SAP says, right? So you got to be able to expand the horizon as well. Thank you, folks. And this has been another episode of Linh Talks Tech. And hopefully we can have another panel back later. Maybe if we want to expand on any of these topics, maybe change management or something that deeper dive, we can maybe perhaps get you guys back for some of that. So I thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
Glad to be back anytime.